This is lesson 35 in Algebra 1. We are talking about factoring. We just talked about how to get the greatest common factor. So let's go back and look at this. We have parentheses, and to get rid of the parentheses, we're going to use the distributive property, and we're going to multiply this out, and we're going to get 2ax plus 2ac. We simply multiply by each one, and we've expanded. So when we say we multiply something, what undoes multiplication? It is division. So to undo this and to get back to here, it's division. We're going to divide each by 2a. So we're going to take out a 2a. We're left with x plus c, which we started with in the beginning. Okay, so we learned in the previous lesson how to get a greatest common factor. And then when we factor it out, we're dividing each term by that, and then you leave what's left. Now remember, let's look at this next example. Okay, if we had plus 9a cubed, okay, and said let's find the greatest common factor. So we're going to take, I'm going to call this term 1 and term 2. So I'm going to get 3 times a times a, and 3 times 3 times a times a times a. So I can take out 1, 3, and I can take out 2 ones. This is term 1, term 2. What am I left with in term 1? So my greatest common factor is a 3a squared. All right. What do I have left here? If I divided this, I took out a 3, I took out an a, I took out an a. What am I left with? 0? That's what we tend to do. No, it's 1. Because basically what we're saying up here is we're saying 3a squared plus 9a cubed. 9a cubed. We're dividing by, we said our greatest common factor was 3a squared. We're dividing by 3a squared. Both terms, and that's what we're taking out. 3 divided by 3 is 1. A squared divided by a squared is 1. It's 1, not 0. We have to remember that's 1. Plus, this is left with an a to the first, and this is 3, so then we're left with 3a. As we can see here, we're left with that 3 and that a. Everything else went away. So, but when we factor out everything in that term, we're not left with 0. It's a common mistake. It's actually 1. 1 plus 3a. Because 1 plus 3a is not the same thing as 0 plus 3a. 0 plus 3a is just 3a. 1 plus 3a is 1 plus 3a. You're adding 1 to that, but they're not like terms, so you can't combine them. So that's all factoring the greatest common factor. So let's look at one that's a little bit more difficult. So the first thing you have to do is you have to get the greatest common factor. So let's look at 6a squared x squared plus 2a cubed x cubed plus 4a to the 4th x cubed. So I'm going to do 2 times 3 times a times x times x. 2 times a times a times a times x times x times x. 2 times 2 times a times a times a times a times x times x times x. Okay? So, I'm not rewriting them, I'm just calling them term 1, term 2, term 3. So, I have 1, 2 I can take out. I have a 3 here, but I don't have a 3 anywhere else, so I can't do that. Got 2 a's, 3 a's, 4. So the lowest number of a's is 2, so I can take out 2 a's. I have 2 x's, I can take out 2 x's. What am I left with here? I'm left with a 3. Here I'm left with an a and an x. Here I'm left with a 2a squared x. So my greatest common factor is 2a squared x squared times 3 plus ax plus 2a squared x. Now if this were a minus, you would minus this last term. You keep the sign with that term. But they're all pluses, so then we just simply add them together. So that's all factoring out the greatest common factors. First, you have to get the greatest common factor. Then you divide each term by it. That's another way of looking at it. Or when you do it this way, you look to see what do you have left. I have a 3. When you divide it out, that's what you get. And then you have to make sure every term, if it all comes out, it becomes 1, not 0. It doesn't go away. All right, so let's talk about canceling. We learned when we're solving algebraic equations, when we have 4x equals 20, we divide both sides by 4, right? So we want to make this 1. We end up 4 divided by 4 reduces to 1x, or simply x equals 5. So they want you to use the word reduce to 1 instead of canceling, because then we tend to use canceling when we're not allowed to. So let's look at this next example here. It's x plus 4 over 4. Can this cancel? No, it can't. We think we can. We're saying we have x plus 4 divided by 4. Okay? Division undoes multiplication. Multiplication undoes division undoes multiplication. This is addition, so it can't undo each other. Now let's look at this one. 4 times x plus 1 over 4. Well, you've got multiplication here, so now these two can reduce to 1, and you're simply left with x plus 1. Let's look at another one. What if I had 3 times x minus 2 over x minus 2? Can I put parentheses around that? These two are the same thing. The same thing divided by the same thing reduces to 1, and 1 times 3 is 3. All right? So you have to have multiplication to reduce. So let's look at this one. 3p plus 3 divided by 3. Well, these go together. They're addition, so you can't reduce these 3. But what I can do is I can factor out a 3 out of each term, and I'm left with p plus 1 over 3. Now, my 3's can cancel out, and I'm left with p plus 1. Okay, so let's look at another one. Let's look at 5x minus 25x squared all over 5xy. Well, it looks like I have some things that I can factor out or simplify, but I've got to factor my numerator first. So let's go ahead and do that first. So you have that as the same. You're left with 1 here, and you're left with 5x. So you've got the greatest common factor is 5x times 1, and you keep this sign for the second term, minus 5x all over 5xy. Well, now that I have multiplication, this 5 divided by 5 reduces to 1, this x and this x reduce to 1. And I'm simply left with 1 minus 5x all over y is your answer. Okay? So you've got to, some of these you have to factor out first, because if you have a minus, remember, what undoes multiplication? Subtraction, addition. So that's not the same thing as dividing. When you're reducing, you're dividing. You can't do that unless you factor out and you've got multiplication like this. All right? The code for this lesson is 765 on the top of homework 33. So 765 on top of lesson homework 33.